Dallas judge Tammy Kemp is defending her decision to hug police officer Amber Guyger after she was sentenced to 10 years in prison for the murder of Botham Jean.
This was the moment Kemp offered Guyger the hug after Jean's brother had done the same thing. Now, Kemp says Guyger twice asked for a hug and that she could not refuse. She spoke with our Dallas Fort Worth station, KTVT, and she said her faith guided her actions.
She will forever be the murderer of Botham Jean. How she carries that thus forward depends on how we receive her. And as a Christian, I believe I'm commanded to offer her love and compassion.
So here with more is public safety and police department reporter for the Dallas Morning News, Cassandra Jaramillo. Thank you so much for joining us, Cassandra. So how has the city of Dallas responded to the judge hugging Guyger? We know sort of the conversation that erupted nationwide, but in Dallas, I'm wondering how they took it.
We saw Dallas Police Chief Renee Hall take that moment of mercy from Botham Jean's little brother, Brant, as an example of how the city should also deal with this trial and some of the tension that's come out of it. Now, with Judge Kemp, it's extremely unusual, and I would say never happens that a judge hugs a convicted felon, but Chief Hall also expressed some admiration for those actions, again reiterating the sentiments of forgiveness and mercy in what was a very emotional and tense trial.
One of the criticisms of the judge's actions has been from groups that are opposed to seeing any kind of mixing between the church and the state. They believe that there should be a separation of church and state, and the fact that the judge, and this has nothing to do with the compassion argument or the one where you see someone as a human being and you want to reach out to them. What some groups are saying is, look, just legally, the way our country, based on the Constitution, is set up, you should not have any displays of religion. And in this particular case, they are saying, these groups are saying, that judge sort of broke that standard.
That's correct. We did see a group submit a complaint against Judge Kemp about this, the action of bringing a Bible into court and giving it to Guyger. We will continue to follow the results of that complaint and where it goes, but at least locally, we did see the city officials very limited critiques of the judge's actions, and more so just an example of forgiveness and mercy.
Can I ask you also, Cassandra, the sort of what we led with, which is how people in Dallas are feeling, because as you know, this controversy, I guess if you want to call it that, had people really divided on social media, and you saw in a lot of think pieces. On one hand, for example, I'm going to read a tweet from Bree Newsom. She's a filmmaker and activist. She has been tweeting a lot about this. You recall she was the one who removed that Confederate flag from that statue. Was how she became known across the country. She wrote this: "The white gaze fixation with black people forgiving racial violence, from court cases to many Hollywood movie plots, is about the redemption of white supremacy in popular culture and imagination. It does not translate to empathy for how racism kills black people." On the flip side of that, you had people like the actor Chris Evans, when he saw that moment when Botham Jean's brother hugged Amber Guyger, he said it was one of the most beautiful things he had ever seen. So I'm just curious, you've seen this national debate around this issue. What are people in Dallas specifically saying?
So we saw on Friday, if I'm not mistaken, a press conference with some of the faith-based leaders here in Dallas and some community activists, along with the Jean family, come out and talk about this. And still, some reporters were wanting to get Brant's reaction to the attention that this hug got, right? And the message there out of that group of folks was, listen, we can recognize forgiveness, but it doesn't separate this mission for justice. And that was the press conference where we saw them, make these calls for an audit of the Dallas Police Department as the trial revealed, some incidents that brought a lot of scrutiny. And so we saw those community leaders and the Jean family say, let's keep the energy going on some of the changes and the reforms that we want to see the police department, and not stay so fixated on this hug. We're past that at this point. We want to see some action.
And that's something that I wanted to ask you about after we learned that Joshua Brown, a key witness in this case, was gunned down. And there have been other stories floating around about other witnesses who lost their jobs because they had come forward with video. I'm just wondering what the relationship is now between the community and the Dallas police force. Is there suspicion? Because I know that, when I saw that headline about a key witness being gunned down, you start to question whether there's more to this or not.
Certainly the timing of the shooting raised a lot of questions and speculations, and also some of the misinformation about how Mr. Brown was shot. Initially there were some rumors that he was shot in the mouth. And so, people had some strong reaction to that because what it insinuates. But we now know through reporting at the Dallas Morning News that Mr. Brown was not shot in the mouth. That is patently false. According to a medical examiner report, he was shot in the back and the thigh, is what we've heard, the two gunshot wounds that he's had. But certainly, the timing of his death is either it's a tragic coincidence or just, raising a lot of concerns within the community. And I think it just points to the continuance of the Dallas Police Department trying to build its trust with communities of color here.
It's just, I think that if anything, this has certainly brought some of the issues that have faced this country for many, many years to sharp focus. And so thank you, Cassandra, for shedding light on it. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Officials say a key witness in the murder trial of former Dallas police officer Amber Guyger was shot dead Friday night. Joshua Brown had been Botham Jean and Guyger's neighbor at the time of Jean's murder. Brown's testimony helped prosecutors piece together what happened to Jean and ultimately led to Guyger's conviction. Omar Villafranca is in Dallas. Omar, what are authorities saying about this?
Well, Dallas police say they are investigating the shooting that happened Friday night at this apartment complex, but so far they don't have any suspects and they do not have a motive. Now, the attorney for the Jean family is also the attorney for the Brown family, and he says his client should have been protected after testifying in Amber Guyger's murder trial.
You may take your seat.
On the witness stand, Joshua Brown recalled feeling startled when he heard the gunshots that would ultimately take Botham Jean's life. Now, the Jean family and their attorney, Lee Merritt, are demanding answers.
To have a key witness suddenly be killed is suspicious. Was this related to the trial? There's no clear indication of that.
Joshua Brown took the stand in Guyger's trial and gave emotional testimony about the night Botham Jean was killed last September. Brown said he was in the hallway when he heard the two gunshots.
Could you tell if one of the voices was giving loud commands like stop, police, or anything of that nature?
Yeah, but no, that wasn't what they were saying.
Be advised, it does look like we have one on the ground.
The shooting that killed Brown happened at a different apartment complex than the one where Guyger and Jean lived. Witnesses described hearing several gunshots Friday night and seeing a silver four-door sedan speeding away from the parking lot. Merritt says Brown was scared someone was after him after he was involved in a separate shooting incident in Dallas.
Did he fear for his life related to this case or anything else in general?
He had been shot less than a year ago, and someone standing near him was killed. He was reluctant to testify in this case because he had been shot at, and he thought some people might want him to do harm to him.
Is there anything police department could have offered, any protection?
If he had concerns for his safety, then the county had an obligation to ensure that those concerns were met.
Hey, Omar, I want to ask you another question about that initial shooting that he was shot sort of a year ago. What do we know about that incident? Was anybody charged? Was he concerned about people coming after him?
It happened last year outside of a Dallas club, and there was somebody who was arrested and charged in that particular case. And apparently in that, he was inside of a club and they had a disagreement. They stepped outside, somebody grabbed a gun, and shots were fired. The person who was standing next to him was the one that was actually shot and killed. He was apparently shot in the foot. Now, Lee Merritt tells me that he feared for his life. He'd actually moved out of town and was trying to get away, but came back. And during the course of this trial, of course, we find out that he was living next to Botham Jean. He was hesitant to testify. The judge did not even swear him in on the witness stand beforehand. Everybody else was sworn in there in front of the judge, and the judge even said, "You've been sworn in before." Came in, gave his testimony. He was hesitant to testify, but he was following what possibly could have been a subpoena or a court order to come in and testify, and did his piece. And that's why Lee Merritt is saying, this is why a lot of people don't want to come forward, because if they have something else going on in their life, they want that sort of protection after they leave, and he's saying his client did not get it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's sort of an indication of the level of violence that many people are living with in our cities. The Jean family is filing a civil case against the city of Dallas for the death of their son. What can you tell us about that?
Yep. That civil case was actually filed weeks and weeks ago, but of course they're waiting. They had to wait for the outcome of the criminal trial, and so now things are getting going with that. Of course, they're suing the city of Dallas, which basically runs the Dallas Police Department. That's how you sue a police department. You sue the city of Dallas, and of course Amber Guyger. And Lee Merritt told us that one of the witnesses they were going to call in the civil trial would have been Joshua Brown. He would have taken the stand in the civil case, but now that can't happen, Amber.
Oh my goodness, Omar, thank you so much.